That completes Anticipate Identity. Now let's move into Watch, Talk, Write, the third strategy in this virtual meeting experience. Watch the video text, make connections with your identity. Listen for the author's purpose in a story of social and emotional learning. Use video text as an opportunity to tie together prior knowledge, new information from the video, and align it with your objectives for the meeting. That way, participants have an opportunity to talk and share and make deeper connections to why the meeting, why the work, and why your objectives are relevant and important. Allow the participants to own the why, and you can cultivate the results. And how is global competition influencing the construction of identity?
More and more, and again, this goes back to considerations of the digital experiences that we're able to have. Our sense of who we are is tied to, and in many ways influenced by, other kinds of things that are going on around the world that we now have access to that formerly we didn't.
This is where we like for participants and communities to just do things for each other to wrap up an entire sequence and an entire experience. Write an encouraging message to a friend or colleague. Deliver it via text or email. Share affirmations associated with their identity.
One of the things, because I've been able to travel, is that when I see all of these reports of the virus spreading in different countries, I've been to many of those countries. I know people in those countries. And so that has a different layer of meaning for me because I'm thinking about particular people who I've interacted with, who I've collaborated with, who I've, in some cases, worked on projects with. And so to wind it down though to the issue that the question is addressing, I'll give you one example. One of my students did her dissertation on Korean dramas, and what she found was that this art form that has been in some ways perfected by South Koreans, and there's zillions of them on Netflix. The assumption, we were looking at issues of cultural diversity, was that the primary people who would be visiting Korean drama websites would be Koreans. Her research found that that was not true, that Koreans were like fourth or fifth in the number of people who populated these websites, that the dramas themselves were being taken up and engaged in by other cultural groups at a much higher level than the Koreans themselves. And at the same time, as they're taking these up, they're also taking up some of the values and images and other kinds of things that are going on in these Korean dramas. Now, one of the things that happens in almost every Korean drama is that even though it's almost always about a love affair, business is always circulating in the background of whatever it is. It's a love affair between a subordinate and their manager. It's a love affair between someone from a lower social class and from an upper social class, always bringing in class as is mediated by wealth or the absence of it, so that there's no way that people who are picking, I would just wonder to what extent is the attractiveness of some of these dramas also tied to these opulent scenes that are shown in terms of these characters in the dramas who are operating at high levels of capitalist competition in the various entrepreneurial endeavors that they're engaged in. And then there's consequences in terms of how they dress, how they talk, food is a central part of almost everything. So the biggest compliment a manager can give to a subordinate is, I'm gonna take you to lunch. I'll buy lunch for you. And for us, it would almost be like, oh, if we're gonna go to lunch, let's split it up. But the idea of who's paying for the lunch and who's being honored is a cultural thing that's coming out of that culture, but I think it will have ripple effects and influences on these masses of people who are engaging in it. And of course, there are websites where people are going to chop up these different um, dramas. They're primarily in English, which is interesting. So you have Korean dramas, which are always subtitled in English, but the discourse that's going around the world from all of these different cultures is mediated by English. So the idea of someone wanting to learn Korean on the one hand, but also wanting to learn English on the other hand in order to participate in a cultural content that's emanating from a particular cultural vantage point, I think is one of the ways that we get influenced. And I'm saying that that's just one example. You could do the same thing with other countries in terms of what they're leading in ways of digital kinds of products and consumption patterns and the ripple influence. But right now in this moment, even though there's a kind of verbal war going on between Mr. Trump and the leaders of China around the COVID-19 virus, people have got to be also picking up some ideas that the notion that we've been propagated in the United States, that the United States is number one in everything, has got to be now counterbalanced by what we see going on around the world, with other countries doing a much better job of controlling that virus than we are. So in fact, we are number one, but we're number one in the number of deaths, and we're number one in the number of infections and the number of people who are hospitalized. So to that extent, Trump was right. He has led us to be number one, but it's a problematic situation to be in.
Dr. Mahiri, I appreciate you taking the time and jumping on. It's been incredible.
Well, I love what you're doing. I always get excited when younger people are taking the entrepreneurial initiative to help us see around the curve. And I think that that's what you're doing. It's like your light is shining in a way that we're able to see around this next curve of how our lives are going to be. We're going to forever be changed. We'll never be the same in relationship to how we interact with one another as a result of the crisis that we're currently in. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm saying that we are, to the extent that there's a level of, a necessity being the mother of invention, we are inventing ways to deal with this necessity that will carry on into our lives after the crisis is also ended.
Well, I appreciate it. And I will definitely share it with you as soon as first chance I get.
No problem. Use it any way you like. I trust your instincts completely.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mahiri.
All right. See you soon.
All right. Bye-bye.